Well, it's good to be back. For 7 years, I guess, 2002 through 2009, every sermon I preached in this church was preached right in this room. And then since 2009, when we built the sanctuary, hardly any sermons that I've preached have been preached in this room. Most have been preached over across the way in the sanctuary. I was over here in November and participated shortly in a baptismal service before I moved back over to the sanctuary. And I was struck by how everybody on the stage had blue jeans on. Oh, wow, man, to be able to wear blue jeans on Sunday in church and to be the preacher. So it's like ever since that day I've had blue jean envy. And I wanted, what do I need to do to be able to wear blue jeans on Sunday morning? So I got up this idea, let's have a day and we'll call it Trading Places Sunday, where we'll just kind of shuffle around so that all the congregations can see one another and know that you have more than just one pastor. My hidden agenda was I get to wear blue jeans if I get back over in the worship center. And so what a great day. Blue jeans today. I won't wear blue jeans next week, but I do get to wear more comfortable apparel on top. Something green and yellow, Don, for Super Bowl Sunday. I'll be back over in the sanctuary, but it's good to be with you today. We did decide seriously to have a day on every month that has 5 Sundays. So the 5th Sunday of every month that has a 5th Sunday, we're gonna shuffle around. We're gonna give one of the preaching pastors the Sunday off. Today that's Lupina, and we're gonna be in different places. So this is our first effort at that. It felt a little bit like being in England this morning, like they drive on the wrong side of the road. You know, you get used to your habits one way, and now it felt strange coming at 8:45 after 8:30 service had already started, but I'm already used to it, and I'm kind of liking being with you. But it's great to be with you today. If you don't know me, I'm Milton Lewis. I know many of you, if not most of you, but if you're newer to the church, I and Lupina and Abdon Garza and Dan Harrington are your pastors collectively of the church. We're not individual pastors of individual congregations, but we are collectively the pastors of this great congregation. Now, in the beginning, God. Just dwell on that for a moment. In the beginning, God. God, in the beginning. It's how our story starts. In the English translations of the Bible, that's the 4th word of the very first verse of the Bible. In the beginning, God. If you flip over to the end, you will find at the end of Revelation, in the end, God. And if you look on just about any page from page 1 to the last page, you will find God. This book is God's book. It is God's story. History is His story. That's what we're reading when we read the Bible. In the beginning, God. I had to make a decision what to preach on this day, because typically we're always in preaching a series of messages, and I've just been kind of popcorning it in January, waiting to get started on a more sustained series in February. And when I had the choice of looking at the preaching material, Lupina is preaching this series in Oasis. Dan has been preaching on the questions, the Wesleyan questions, and they're both very compelling. But I found as I looked, this fits a little better with Lupina's theme, fits a little better with what I'm going to be moving into in February in the sanctuary, when I talk about the will and the purposes and the ways of God in the beginning, in the end, and everywhere in between. Also, there's some really compelling questions that we're going to look at this morning, and I don't know if they fit into the exact questions that Dan has been raising, but I know they fit the spirit of what Dan has been raising. So if I don't know what you're planning in Remix, but I'm going to give you some good questions before this message is over to consider about how we experience and know God in our lives. Okay? Wait, where's the laser light? Don't fall asleep on me. I've got a laser light. In the beginning, God. God is the God of every generation. But I want to give you a quick review of where Lupina has been and where we're going with the rest of this. In the beginning, God is the God of creation. In the beginning, God spoke, and life came to be. In the beginning, God created man and woman in his image. He created us for each other. He is the God of relationships. He wants relationship with us. He wants us to be in right relationship with one another. In the beginning, God made covenant with his people. I think last week Lupina talked about the Noahic covenant and the covenant that was marked by the rainbow after the flood, where God promised never to flood the earth again. That was the introduction to covenant. We'll talk more about that in this message today, and I'll come to that in a few moments. But next week, you're going to talk about the God of redemption, the God of redemption, the God who's always working to redeem his people and save his people from their sin, from themselves, from whatever holds them captive. But today, we're talking about the God of every generation. In every tense of time, from beginning to end, God is present. Should really put 3 dots after present. God is present. God is there. That's the overwhelming message of our scripture. God is present in every tense of time. At the beginning of time in creation, later on with Abraham, and then with Isaac, and then with Jacob and Joseph, and all the generations after, God is present at the end. God is present in our generation. God is the God who is always there. What is one of the names given to Jesus? Emmanuel, God with us. How are we affirmed over and over? I will never fail you or forsake you. Psalm 42, 46, I'm not sure which it is. God is an ever-present help. Which one is it, Bill? Do you know? Is it 42 or 46? God is an ever-present help in time of trouble. Always there for his people. David says of God, if I descend into hell itself, you are there. There's no place I can go that God is not. God is ever and always present. And God is present in a way that is active. He is speaking and listening. He is leading. He is sometimes wrestling with and arguing with his people. He is always deeply involved. God is not off in a corner somewhere like some old man in a rocking chair with a long white beard just kind of watching to see what we do. God's involved. God is active in the story. He's showing up everywhere, encountering his people. God is not watching from the safety of his television room to see what we're doing on TV. God is not even sitting up in the stands. God is not coaching from the sideline. God is not sitting on the bench saying, put me in, coach. God is in the game. Now understand what that means. God is active in our world. God is present. God is active in the world in which we live. Let's talk about covenant for just a moment. That illustrates that in every generation, God seeks and initiates a binding relationship with God's people. God is seeking relationship, a binding relationship with his people. Now, the covenant that Lupina talked about last week, there's a technical name for it, but basically it was a kind of a unilateral covenant. It was a one-sided covenant, if you will. After the flood, it says that God was in distress over the sin that had come into the world before the flood. The flood comes as God's judgment upon the world, and then afterwards, God regrets what has happened and says, I will never again flood the earth. And I will put my bow in the sky as a sign of that covenant. Covenants typically have something that symbolizes the covenant. God made that promise, and it doesn't require anything of any of us. We can go on being as wicked as we want. We can do whatever we want to do. God has said, I will never flood the earth again. That's a one-sided or unilateral type of covenant. But the most common aspect of covenant in the Bible is not those one-sided covenants where God just makes a promise. It is the kind of covenant where it's a mutual type of thing, like the marriage covenant, where we're making promises to one another. I'm promising you something, but you're promising something to me in return. And so God makes the covenant with Abraham. I will make of you a great nation. And he repeats it to Isaac and to Jacob and ultimately to Joseph. And he continues to repeat it through the generations. He makes a covenant with Moses that he will deliver the people into the land of promise and milk and honey. And these covenants are predicated, though, on, he says to Abraham, if you will go where I send you, if you'll go where I send you. So there's something expected of us in return. And then in Jeremiah, God promises the new covenant. Again, all about seeking relationship. God offering God's self in a binding relationship with his people and expecting and hoping for our compliance, our cooperation in what God wants to do, needing our cooperation, culminating then in the new covenant, which is represented in Jesus Christ and symbolized by the cup and the bread. The new covenant of grace that God gave to us so that we can be in relationship with God. That's all God has ever wanted, a binding relationship with God's people and us to reciprocate and give that back to God. The patriarchs repeated the covenant. Abraham is given the covenant, the initial covenant marked by circumcision to make of him a great nation. Then it's repeated to Isaac, this child that comes along whose name means laughter, because Sarah laughed at God when God suggested that he would make them pregnant at such an old age. And then Jacob, who was renamed Israel. What does Israel mean? Israel means to strive with God, to wrestle with God. There's a lot of significance in the fact that the name of the people came to be the people who strive with God. It's not like this, yes, sir, no, sir, compliant kind of thing. Whatever you say, sir, we'll do it. The people of Israel, the people of God, are those who contend with God. And God's like, bring it on. I'll contend with you. What did Jacob do at night wrestling with God? He wrestled all night with God. And God said, okay, I'll wrestle with you. You're going to get the worst of it, but I'll wrestle with you. And they strive all night. And at the end of the night, God blesses Jacob. And Jacob says, I have seen God face to face. And Jacob limps away from the encounter with God. He's got a limp as a result of that. The patriarchs, Genesis, first 11 chapters are called the primeval history, the primitive history. Creation, Adam and Eve, Tower of Babel, the flood. It's sort of the general primeval, primitive history of humankind. But beginning at chapter 12, it becomes what has been called the patriarchal history, the history of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, and the patriarchs of Israel. You really should call it the patriarchal and matriarchal history, because it takes two to create the kind of creation God is trying to create in making of them a great nation. So it should be about Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah, Jacob and Leah and Rachel. You know, the women who were involved as well. But when I studied it in seminary, it was just called the patriarchal history. Maybe in the more contemporary theology text, it's called the patriarchal and the matriarchal history of the Bible. But in any case, now it's getting personal, from this generality to talking about specific individuals and people. Now here's the thing to note about how God encounters these people. There is intimacy. Every page, every chapter just about, you read, the Lord said to Abraham, and Abraham said something back to the Lord. The Lord appeared to Abraham, and Abraham listened to what the Lord would say in that appearance. And that's routine. It continues on with Isaac. It continues on with Jacob. God said this. God said that. God showed up here. God showed up there. And these encounters are very frequent. They happen with great regularity. It's commonplace almost. Now think about that. We heard a testimony the other night, a powerful testimony on Wednesday night worship. But it included what most of us would say in our testimonies. I've never actually heard the voice of God. I've never actually heard the voice of God. I would say that. We all would say that. If one of us did hear the voice of God, we'd be reluctant to tell anybody because they think we were crazy. God talked to me. God spoke to me, and God said this, and God said that. Yeah, right, you need to just kind of calm down. I know you're excited about everything, but just calm down a little bit. It'll all be okay. We don't see the commonplace presence and vision of God. But in the Old Testament, it's like this happens every day. This happens all the time. Abraham never went and said, oh, guess what, everybody? God appeared to me, and God spoke to me. It's just like God spoke to me, God appeared to me, no big deal. That's called immanence, I-M-M-A-N-E-N-C-E, immanent with an A, not with an I. When it has an I, it means it's about to, like the storm is imminent, it's about to rain. When it has an A, it means God, let me give you the definition, pervading and sustaining the universe, referring to God permanently pervading and sustaining the universe, as opposed to transcendence. Transcendence is when God is out there, the great mystery that we can't see or hear or know. God is both of those, immanent and transcendent. But in the Old Testament, he's there every day. He's there all the time. He's there all the time. And it's give and take. It's back and forth. He comes and says, Sarah, you're going to have a baby. And she laughs. And then he comes and says, she's in the tent. She overhears that. And he says, was that you in there laughing? No, it wasn't me laughing. I promise I wasn't laughing. I'm only 90 years old, never had a child, but it wasn't me, Lord. I promise you, I'm taking this deadly seriously. And no, it was you. It was you. You were in there laughing. I heard you. You were laughing. It's back and forth. He says, I'm going to destroy Sodom because it's so unrighteous and so wicked. Abraham says, well, what if we could find 50 righteous people? Would you not destroy it? God's like, okay, if you can find 50 righteous people, I won't destroy it. Then Abraham goes, well, what if we could find 45 righteous people? Okay, I'll save it for 45. 40, 30, 20, 10, talks him down to 10. So it's give and take, it's dialogue, it's back and forth. It's a very real God whose reality is assumed. We don't have to go, do you believe in God? They know God and they interact with God. And this God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. It's powerful. Now, these questions. How do you or I experience the real presence of God? Do you experience or know the real presence of God? God became more real to me than he'd ever been when I was a freshman in college. There was a series of circumstances. I was in a time where I was searching. I was confused about a lot of things. I was lonely. I'd been in a small town, knew everybody in the town. Now I'm up at a major university in a big city, and it's just I'm off balance. I've got some crisis going on, some crisis of spirit. There was a friend of mine who had really given his life to Christ. He was active in Campus Crusade, and he had talked about going into the ministry. On the way home for Christmas break, he had a car accident, and he was unconscious for 3 weeks. And I'm sitting there going, why him and not me? I mean, nothing ever goes wrong with my life. Nothing ever happens to me bad. But I don't have a clue what I want to do with my life, and I'm just kind of wasting my life. So why him lying unconscious in the hospital and me, who doesn't have the courage to really commit his life to Christ? So all those kind of things are going on in my life. And somewhere in the midst of all that, through witness and testimony of other people, I could tell you if I had more time, but I came to know Jesus in a way I'd never known him. I'd always believed. I'd never not believed. But I had never had this experience of the real presence of Christ. Second semester in English Lit, the first essay is write an essay on the best friend you met your first semester in college. And I wrote my essay on my new best friend, Jesus, and turned it into my agnostic English literature teacher. I think I got a B on the paper, which was probably generous. My relationship with Jesus was more like probably a C at the time. And she didn't even really know how to talk about that. But it's like, I can't give a kid a bad grade who says that he's really met Jesus. And journaling with Jesus, talking with Jesus, interacting with Jesus, feeling that he's right there with me. I've said before, I don't have to doubt. I don't have to wonder. You don't have to wonder if someone exists that you feel like you know. If you feel that you know them, that's a moot point. Do they really exist or not? How do we get into those arguments? When has God been closest? When has God been the farthest from you? I promise you, whatever the answer to that question is, you're going to describe a different set of circumstances. Closest, you're probably going to say, I was seeking, I was learning, I was active, I was worshiping, I was studying, I was praying. Farthest, you're probably going to say, something to the effect of, I drifted into sin. I got caught up in my own selfish ambition. Reminds me of that story of the man and his wife are going to dinner, a middle-aged couple, and they're stopped at a stoplight. And he's driving, and she's sitting in the passenger side of their, what's that, the Grand Marquis? Isn't that the car that we drive when we get old? The big old long one, wide one? You know, and they're sitting there at the stoplight, and there's a guy and a girl in a pickup truck right in front of them. And she's all the way over, just virtually in his lap. And while they're stopped at the red light, they're just making out and hugging and kissing on each other. And the wife looks at her husband and she says, why don't we do that anymore? And he says, I didn't move. When God is farthest, who moved? How do I practice the presence of God? Do I practice the presence through what we know as the spiritual disciplines of devotional life, of prayer, of worship, of being studious, of reading books about faith, of being in relationship with people of faith? That really is a way to keep God alive. How's my prayer life? How do I pray? I found when Jesus became real to me that prayer became conversational, like it is in the Old Testament. Not formal, not, oh God in heaven, if thou would hearest my prayer, these are the things that I need. That's how so much of our prayers are. Or if you're really there, give me a sign. No, it's conversational as if he's there. So let me suggest, you want God to be more real in your life, start talking to God as if he's right there with you and interested in what you're interested in, and you're interested in what he's interested in. That's how we come to know the real God. Do I imagine God as personal or impersonal? That's going to be a part of what I talk about in Sanctuary in the month of February. I think too many times we think of God as some impersonal, immutable force, like the law of gravity, that's really unknowable, when the very opposite is witnessed to over and over in Scripture. God is personal. God is real. And God can be known as a real and a personal God who has personality, who has a mind, who will engage us, who is active in our lives and in our world. And how do I know God is real, even if I do not feel God's real presence? There is such a thing as the experience of the absence of God. Jesus felt it on the cross. My God, why have you forsaken me? The experience of the absence of God, none of us is immune from that experience. But take a clue from Jesus, who in that moment of experiencing the absence of God, why have you forsaken me, continued to cry to God as my God, my God. Jesus didn't say it's all gone bad. This proves there is no God. In his worst moment, Jesus said, my God, calls to the one that he knows will vindicate him ultimately. God is real. God is real from the very beginning to the very end and all the way through. How do we know the God who lives in all generations?